The gate code incident started with a noise I couldn't place. A faint metallic click at my fence line around 6 in the morning, before the sun had even cleared the treeline. I just poured coffee and was halfway through feeding my dog, Jasper, when the sound came again. It was distinct, deliberate, like someone fiddling with a keypad. I froze, mug in hand, then walked quietly to the window overlooking the driveway. There she was. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, crouched by my brand-new electronic gate. She had a notebook open, her finger hovering over the keypad, and she was mouthing numbers to herself. I almost spit my coffee. This wasn't her first boundary-crossing act. Last month she'd stood in front of the fence with a clipboard, writing down the color of my mailbox because it wasn't HOA-approved beige. Before that, she'd left a note on my windshield accusing me of illegally parking on my own property. Still, trying to steal my gate code? That was new even for her. I let her punch in a few more numbers before I hit the intercom button on my phone. "You know that thing records, right?" I said. Her head snapped up so fast she nearly dropped her pen. Karen stammered something about routine security checks. I told her unless the HOA's bylaws had recently expanded to include breaking and entering, she should probably stop trespassing. She straightened up, red-faced but defiant, and said, "As HOA president, I have a right to ensure compliance. Gates like this need to be approved." I replied that the city approved it, not her, and pressed the lock button just to hear the gate's motor hum like a loyal guard dog. She glared at the camera and muttered, "We'll see about that." Then she stormed off, her notebook clutched like evidence. By noon, I'd gotten 3 emails from the HOA. Each one was a complaint. "Your gate's color is not in harmony with the community aesthetic. The keypad lighting violates dusk-to-dawn brightness limits. The gate's motion sensor sound is disruptive." I didn't even know motion sensors made sound. I forwarded them all to my lawyer friend, Dan, who simply wrote back, "Classic power trip. Document everything." So I did, screenshots, timestamps, even a short video of her early morning code attempt. The following week, the situation escalated. Karen started parking her SUV directly across from my gate, claiming she was monitoring traffic. Once, she stood there holding a walkie-talkie and talking to someone I couldn't see, as if she were conducting a neighborhood sting operation. I decided to play the long game. I called a contractor to install an additional fence section. This one taller, with privacy slats and an automatic lock that synced with the gate system. If Karen wanted to peek, she'd get a lovely view of solid steel. When the workers arrived, she marched over demanding to see permit. I handed her a printed copy with my signature and the city's approval seal. She scanned it, frowned, and said, "This is excessive for a residential boundary." I asked if she wanted to take it up with the city inspector, who conveniently lived 2 houses down. She muttered something about a community dictatorship and stomped away. That evening, my wife came home and laughed when she saw the new fence. "You built Fort Knox," she said. "No, I built Karen-proofing," I replied. Things stayed quiet for a few days, until Saturday morning. I woke up to the sound of my gate motor grinding. I checked the security feed and saw Karen again, this time with her phone pressed to her ear and her other hand on the keypad. She was typing furiously, clearly convinced she could outsmart the system. What she didn't know was that the new upgrade had a tamper alert. 5 failed attempts triggered an autolock and a security message to my phone. When the system froze, she kicked the gate in frustration and yelled, "Open this thing! I know the code, you changed it illegally." I decided to have a little fun. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, still in pajamas. "Need help?" I called. She spun around, caught like a raccoon in a trash can. "You changed it," she accused. "You can't just lock out your neighbors." I explained calmly that this was my private entrance and that trespassing was, in fact, illegal. She crossed her arms. "I have every right to access community pathways." I looked at the pavement under her shoes. "That path." I pointed. "Private property." The HOA map ends 20 feet back. Her jaw tightened. Then the twist hit, literally. Behind her, the new fence's automatic latch clicked shut. She must have walked through it earlier when it was open for deliveries. Now, with both the gate and the fence locked, she was trapped in the narrow space between them, standing in her floral housecoat and flip-flops, clutching her phone. "Are you serious right now?" she said. "You can't lock me in here." I shrugged. "I didn't lock you in. You walked in." She demanded I open it immediately, threatening to call the police. I told her to go ahead. She did, and that was the best part. The responding officer was the same one who'd warned her last month about harassing delivery drivers. When he arrived, I waved from my porch while Karen tried to explain how she'd ended up between a private gate and a private fence at 7 in the morning. "Ma'am, did he invite you in?" the officer asked. "No, but, did he threaten you?" "No, but, then you're trespassing." Her face turned the color of boiled shrimp. The officer told her to step back while he called me over. I gave him the footage from the security cam. He watched it on my phone and smirked. "She really tried the code 5 times, huh?" he said. I nodded. "Persistent," I replied. He walked back and said, "Ma'am, this isn't a community gate. You need to leave the property immediately." When she complained that she couldn't, he gestured for me to open it. I pressed the button, and the gate slid open slowly like a stage curtain revealing her humiliation. She stomped out without a word, hair frizzed from the humidity, muttering that she would escalate this to the board. The officer told her good luck with that. After she left, he looked at me and said, "You might want to keep that camera rolling. Something tells me she's not done." I told him that's why I upgraded the system: motion sensors, alerts, even a fail-safe backup generator. He laughed and said, "Smart man." That night, I reviewed the footage again. Karen's expression when she realized she was trapped: pure disbelief, then fury, then something that almost looked like shame. Almost. I couldn't help but wonder what her endgame was. Did she really think learning my gate code would give her control? Or was it just about proving she could? Either way, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't over. The HOA meeting was in 3 days, and Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds quietly. She'd come back swinging, and I'd be ready. The funny part? I didn't even need to plan revenge. All I had to do was let Karen keep being Karen. The more she tried to control, the deeper she dug herself in. I just had to watch, record, and wait. And something told me that the next move she made would make today's gate fiasco look tame. The HOA meeting that week felt like walking into a courtroom where the judge was also the accuser. Karen sat at the head of the long oak table in the community hall, posture stiff, pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The rest of the board members looked nervous, like they knew a storm was coming but couldn't stop it. I took a seat in the back with a neutral smile and a stack of printed documents, because when dealing with Karen, paper trails were armor. She began with her usual preamble about maintaining community standards, her voice sharp and practiced. Then she slid into the real reason everyone was there. "It has come to my attention," she said dramatically, "that a certain homeowner has installed a gate system that violates multiple HOA codes." Her eyes flicked toward me. "In addition, said homeowner has behaved aggressively toward community officials, myself included, by unlawfully detaining me within his property boundaries." There was a murmur. She had the audacity to call trespassing official duties. I stood, calm as ever, and said, "Karen, you weren't detained. You walked through my gate without permission and got yourself stuck." She slammed her palm on the table. "That's not true. The gate malfunctioned and trapped me." I held up a USB drive. "Would you like to see the footage?" That shut her up for a moment. The treasurer, a quiet man named Bill who always looked like he regretted running for the board, cleared his throat. "Maybe we should view the footage before making any accusations." Karen frowned but couldn't object without looking worse. So I plugged it into the projector. The video played on the white wall. Karen in her robe, muttering to herself while punching the keypad, then the gate locking, then me stepping outside in my slippers. The moment she realized she was trapped drew a few chuckles from the room. When it ended, I said, "If the HOA considers trespassing part of official business, then I'll start leaving my door unlocked so you can come check my kitchen tiles." The room laughed openly this time. Karen's face hardened. "You think this is funny?" she hissed. "You humiliated me." I replied evenly, "You humiliated yourself. I just own a camera." That's when she lost her composure. This community has gone downhill ever since people started putting up walls. We used to trust each other. Her voice cracked on the word trust. It was almost sad. For a second, I glimpsed what drove her: the fear of losing control, of the neighborhood changing without her consent. But then she pointed at me and said, "And you're the ringleader of it. You're turning this place into a fortress." Bill raised a hand. "Karen, let's stay on topic. His permits are valid, and we just saw that the incident wasn't his fault. Maybe we move on." She clenched her jaw. "Fine. But this isn't over." After the meeting, people actually came up to me. That never happened before. A couple thanked me for standing up to her. One woman whispered, "She once measured my grass height with a ruler." Another said, "She fined me because my Halloween pumpkin was too big." I realized Karen had alienated nearly everyone, but nobody wanted to challenge her, until now. Later that night, my wife and I sat on the porch, laughing about the footage replaying in people's head. She said, "You know she's going to retaliate, right?" I nodded. "Of course. She always does. But every move she makes digs the hole deeper." Sure enough, retaliation arrived the next morning in the form of a formal violation notice stuck to my door. "Unauthorized fence expansion," it read. "Removal required within 7 days." I almost admired her persistence. I called the city inspector who had approved the fence. He sounded amused. "She filed a complaint an hour ago," he said. "We already closed it. Everything's compliant." He added, "She's called 3 times this month. We're keeping a file." That gave me an idea. I started a binder, the Karen Chronicles. Every email, photo, and video went inside. It was half protection, half hobby. By week's end, I'd already filled 20 pages. But then came the twist I didn't see coming. Friday evening, my gate system pinged an alert. "Unauthorized access attempt detected." I checked the live feed. No one was there. Or so I thought. Then I noticed movement near the fence corner, someone crouching. It was Karen again, flashlight in hand, phone camera recording. She was inspecting the new fence slats like a detective at a crime scene. I stepped outside quietly and called out, "Looking for something?" She jumped and dropped her flashlight. "You scared me," she said. "You can't sneak up on people like that." I replied, "You're on my property again." She pointed at the ground. "This isn't your property. It's the HOA easement zone." I smiled. "Actually, the easement ends 6 feet that way. Want to see the plat map?" She hesitated, clearly not expecting me to know that. "You think you're so clever," she said. "You can't hide behind rules forever." Then she stormed off again, muttering into her phone. But this time, I noticed something odd. She wasn't recording for herself. She was live-streaming. I could hear her saying, "This homeowner is defying HOA authority. We'll make sure justice is served." Within an hour, a post appeared on the community Facebook group. "Non-compliant homeowner refuses inspection, endangering neighborhood security." The photo she uploaded was a zoomed-in shot of my gate keypad. Comments started piling up, some mocking, some supportive. The best one said, "Karen, are you okay? It's a fence, not Area 51. That night, my phone buzzed again. Another alert. I opened the feed and froze. Someone was cutting through the back hedge. Not Karen this time. A teenager in a hoodie. I ran outside, but by the time I reached the gate, the kid was gone. A few seconds later, Karen's voice carried from across the street. "See? That's what happens when people build fortresses. They attract criminals." I realized what she was doing, weaponizing coincidence. The next morning, I went to check the gate logs. The system had captured the kid's face clearly. He was a local teenager named Luke, known for mischief. I printed a still image and brought it to his parents, who were horrified. They made him apologize in person. Karen, watching from her porch, looked disappointed. Her narrative of chaos had fallen apart. But she wasn't done. That afternoon, she filed another complaint: improper surveillance equipment. Apparently, my security cameras violated community privacy norms. I attended the follow-up hearing, calmly handed the board-printed city regulations confirming all my equipment was legal, and then asked if we should discuss Karen's repeated trespassing. The silence that followed was delicious. Bill finally said, "Karen, this is becoming personal. Maybe take a break." Her eyes darted between us, trembling with frustration. "You're all blind. He's manipulating everyone." Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a decoration fell off the wall. After she left, the vice president leaned toward me and whispered, "We've been trying to replace her for years. She scares everyone." I replied, "She scares me too, but mostly because I think she believes she's right." The following days were strangely peaceful. No notes, no violations, no surveillance. I almost thought she'd given up. My wife said maybe we could finally enjoy quiet evenings again. I wasn't convinced. Karen didn't quit, she regrouped. My hunch proved right on Sunday morning when I got an anonymous letter in my mailbox. No stamp, just hand-delivered. Inside was a single sheet of paper that said, "Enjoy your little fence while it lasts. Some of us know the real rules." I couldn't help but laugh. It sounded like something a movie villain would say, but coming from Karen, it was just another Tuesday. Still, I upgraded again. New keypad, encrypted entry codes, cloud backups for every camera feed. If she wanted a war, I'd fight it legally and quietly. The next HOA meeting was a week away, and I had a feeling she'd come back swinging harder than ever. That night, as I reviewed footage one more time, I caught something odd, a faint reflection on the gate's steel surface. Someone had been standing in the shadows beyond the camera's range, watching. It wasn't Karen's silhouette. Taller, broader, wearing a cap. For the first time, I felt a flicker of unease. Maybe this had gone beyond her obsession. Maybe she'd found help. And if she had, the next round of this feud was going to be something else entirely. The following morning started deceptively normal. Birds, sunlight, coffee, the faint hum of my gate motor cycling for a delivery truck. But under that calm, something felt off. I couldn't shake the image from the previous night's footage, that shadowy figure standing just outside the camera's range. Whoever it was, they'd been watching the gate for a good minute before disappearing. Karen wasn't tall enough to match the silhouette, and the way they stood, still, patient, didn't fit her agitated energy. She was chaos incarnate. This was someone else entirely. I decided to tighten my security perimeter. I added a motion light along the back fence, upgraded the camera angles, and enabled the system's audio detection feature. Jasper followed me around, tail wagging, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Around noon, while installing a new sensor, I heard the familiar sound of Karen's SUV idling outside. I turned and saw her parked on the street, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through her phone while clearly watching me. I waved. She didn't wave back. My wife leaned out the kitchen window and whispered, "She's back on her stakeout mode." I nodded. "Let her watch," I said. "She can't argue with the law, but she can't resist trying." Still, her presence gnawed at me. I had work to do, but every few minutes, I found myself glancing toward her car. Finally, after 30 minutes of her sitting there, I decided to confront her. I walked up to her window and knocked. She jumped, then rolled it down halfway. "Good morning, Karen," I said. "Car trouble, or are you running your own neighborhood patrol again?" She smirked. "Just ensuring compliance. You never know what people might install without approval." Her tone dripped with condescension. I replied evenly, Everything on my property is approved. Would you like to see the paperwork again? She scoffed. You think paperwork makes you a good neighbor? You've turned this place into a surveillance compound. People are talking. I leaned slightly closer. Are they talking, or are you talking to yourself on multiple accounts again? Her jaw tightened. You'll regret mocking me, she said, then rolled up the window and sped off. Jasper barked as she drove away, tail high like a victory flag. By evening, I got confirmation that she wasn't bluffing. Someone had tagged my name on the HOA's community Facebook group, linking a new post titled, "When One Homeowner Thinks He's Above the Rules." It was filled with photos, my fence, my cameras, even a zoomed-in shot of my wife unloading groceries. That last one crossed a line. I commented publicly, "Thanks for the free advertising for my security setup. For anyone concerned, it's fully city approved." The replies were split, half defending me, half telling Karen to get a life. But one comment caught my eye. "Don't worry, Karen. We'll take care of it tomorrow." The profile was new, blank, and suspiciously named HOA Warrior. Something about it made my stomach twist. That night, I stayed awake later than usual, reviewing live feed. Around 11:30 p.m., the motion sensor at the side gate triggered. I zoomed in on the monitor, and there he was again. The same tall figure, hoodie up, face hidden. This time, he had a tool bag. My pulse quickened. I hit the intercom and said, "Smile for the camera." He froze for half a second, then bolted down the driveway, jumping into a dark SUV parked near the curb. My cameras caught the plate number perfectly. I jotted it down. The next morning, I handed the footage to Officer Daniels, the same one who dealt with Karen before. He looked exhausted but interested. "You think she sent him?" he asked. "She's petty, but hiring someone would be new even for her." I shrugged. "If not her, then one of her disciples." He took notes, then said, "We'll run the plate. In the meantime, keep those cameras rolling." By mid-afternoon, Karen was back at it, this time with backup. She'd brought 2 board members to my driveway and was pointing at the fence like a general inspecting enemy lines. I stepped outside, calm and polite. "Morning, folks," I said. "Inspection day again?" One of them, a timid woman named Linda, looked embarrassed. "Karen wanted us to verify something," she said softly. Karen cut in, "Yes. We have reports of unauthorized electrical work and unsafe lighting levels." I gestured toward the fully enclosed, code-stamped setup. "Everything's up to standard. Would you like to call the city inspector again?" Karen looked ready to explode. "This constant defiance will not stand," she snapped. "You think you can mock the HOA indefinitely?" I smiled. "Not indefinitely. Just until the bylaws stop contradicting themselves." That line broke Linda. She snorted, trying to hide a laugh. Karen glared daggers at her. "This is harassment," she shouted. "He's intimidating me." Bill arrived moments later, apparently summoned by text. "What's going on?" he asked. Karen launched into a tirade about unauthorized modifications and verbal attacks. Bill looked at me, then at the others, and sighed. "Karen, you need to stop making this personal." She turned red. "It's not personal, it's principle." He looked genuinely tired now. Principle doesn't involve sneaking into someone's property or posting their family photos online. Karen's lips parted, speechless for once. "How do you?" He cut her off. "People forwarded the screenshots. The board voted this morning. You're suspended from HOA duties pending review." It was like watching a balloon deflate. Karen's bravado melted into stunned silence. "You can't suspend me," she said weakly. "I founded this HOA." Bill shook his head. "You organized it, Karen. You don't own it." She stood there for several seconds, trembling with rage, before spinning on her heel and leaving. Linda whispered, "You might have just saved the neighborhood." Bill replied, "No, we just postponed the explosion." He was right. Because that night the real chaos started. At 2:17 a.m., every motion sensor around my property went off simultaneously. My phone blared with alerts. I opened the live feed and froze. My gate was wide open. The security system had been tampered with. Someone had cut the power to the main control box. I rushed outside, flashlight in hand. Jasper barked furiously behind me. The night air smelled faintly of ozone and oil, like freshly handled machinery. Then I saw it. Deep scratches along the gate's hinge, as if someone had tried prying it open with a crowbar. But what really caught my eye was the trail of muddy footprints leading away from the fence, straight toward Karen's backyard. I didn't chase. Instead, I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and called Daniels. He arrived 20 minutes later, flashlight sweeping across the ground. "You said you have footage?" I nodded, leading him to the monitors. The video was grainy from the power flicker, but it showed enough. 2 figures, both wearing dark hoodies, one shorter than the other. They worked fast, disabling the power box and forcing the gate. Then they ran toward the property line. Daniels paused the video. "That shorter one, see the posture?" He zoomed in. "That's a woman." The next day, Karen's SUV was gone. Her house looked oddly quiet, blinds drawn, mailbox overflowing. For someone who craved attention, her sudden absence was suspicious. Bill told me later that she'd taken a few days off for personal reasons. I wondered if those reasons involved explaining something to the police. 2 days later, Daniels called. "We ran that plate," he said. "Registered to a contractor named Mark Jennings. Guess who listed him as an emergency contact?" I didn't have to guess. "Karen," I said. "Bingo. He's her cousin. Says she asked him to inspect your gate for code violations. Claimed it was HOA business. He swears he didn't break anything, just checked the wiring. But that doesn't explain why they ran. I asked if they were pressing charges. He said they were investigating. Between the footage and her pattern of behavior, it's not looking good for her," he added. That evening, I sat on my porch again, watching the sunset through the new steel slats, and thought about how far this had spiraled. It started with a keypad and an inflated ego. Now it was police reports, trespassing, vandalism, borderline obsession. My wife joined me, setting down 2 mugs of tea. "You should be angry," she said, "but you look disappointed." I nodded slowly. "Because I wanted her to stop herself. But she doesn't know how." A car slowed outside. It wasn't Karen's SUV. This one was unfamiliar. A dark sedan. It lingered near the curb for a few seconds, headlights off, then drove away. I stood there for a moment, uneasy again. "She's not done," I murmured. My wife sighed. "Then we'll be ready." And as night settled over the quiet neighborhood, I realized this wasn't just about fences or gates anymore. It was about control, and what happens when someone built on authority loses every bit of it. By Monday morning, the neighborhood felt different. Not calmer, just heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Word about Karen's suspension had spread faster than wildfire. Some neighbors were cautiously optimistic, others skeptical, and a few, mostly her loyalists, were already whispering about a comeback. I'd lived here long enough to know she wouldn't stay silent. Karen's pride was like gravity. It always pulled her back into the center of attention. Sure enough, her SUV reappeared by Wednesday. I spotted it from my window, polished and parked at a perfect 45-degree angle in front of her driveway, like nothing had happened. My wife muttered, "Here we go again." I agreed. But this time, I wasn't worried. The new security system had redundant power lines and cloud backup. The gate could withstand a small hurricane. What could she possibly do now? The answer came faster than I expected, through a smiling real estate agent. He showed up around noon, clipboard in hand, asking if I'd like to discuss potential buyers interested in off-market properties. I blinked. "What?" He pointed vaguely toward the HOA office. "We're doing informal interest surveys. I was told your lot might be rezoned soon." I raised an eyebrow. "By who?" He gave a hesitant smile. A community representative named Karen. I couldn't help laughing. She's trying to sell my house now? The poor guy looked confused. Oh, I didn't realize. I stopped him there and explained the situation. His eyes widened. Oh my God, she's done this before? I said, with slightly less creativity, yes. He apologized profusely and promised to clarify sources next time. I gave him a bottle of water and sent him on his way, amused but also curious. Rezoning? That was a new card in her deck. Later that day, I logged into the county's online property records just to be sure. Everything was normal. No pending changes, no filings. But there was a recent request to review property boundaries for community standard enforcement. Filed by, you guessed it, Karen. She'd submitted it under her HOA title, which was technically suspended. That meant she'd either faked an authorization or convinced someone in the office to look the other way. I printed a copy and added it to my ever-growing binder. That night, while filing it away, I noticed something strange on my surveillance logs. Between 2 and 3 a.m. the night before, one of the cameras had gone dark for exactly 11 minutes. The feed didn't cut to black. It froze, then resumed as if nothing had happened. But when I reviewed the neighboring camera, I caught faint movement, a flashlight beam skimming across the far fence line. Someone had been there again. I wasn't sleeping much by that point, so I went out the next night to test a theory. I set a decoy camera, an older, visible model near the fence corner. Then I hid a newer one, nearly invisible, aimed from an opposite angle. If someone came back, I'd see them twice. Around midnight, I was nodding off in the living room when Jasper started growling. The motion alert followed seconds later. I turned to the screen. There she was. Karen, in a hoodie this time, creeping along the side fence with a small flashlight. Her face wasn't visible at first, but when she leaned closer to the keypad, the hood slipped. She was muttering to herself, clearly trying to read the code from the worn buttons. My first instinct was disbelief. She'd actually returned to the scene of her humiliation. I hit record on the second feed, capturing her from both sides. Then I switched on the floodlight. The beam hit her like a stage spotlight. She screamed and dropped the flashlight, staggering back into the fence. "Karen!" I shouted through the intercom. "You trying to memorize my digits again?" Her voice trembled, but she tried to sound defiant. "You can't install unregistered electronics. I'm inspecting. At 1 in the morning?" I cut in. "You really take your job seriously." She fumbled for her flashlight but couldn't find it. The absurdity of the scene almost made me laugh. She was standing in her slippers, half hidden in shadows, still pretending she was performing some official duty. Finally, she yelled, "This is harassment. I'm documenting your threats," and ran back toward her yard. The next morning, I called Daniels again. When he saw the footage, he didn't even try to hide his amusement. "She broke her suspension terms the second she stepped foot on your property," he said. "You want to file a restraining order?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to end this decisively. Another part wanted her to keep digging her own grave. "Let's start with a warning," I said. "Something formal. Paper always rattles her more than confrontation." So, the police delivered a notice to her house. It wasn't an arrest, just a legal warning that further trespassing would carry consequences. For 2 glorious days peace returned. No cars idling by the curb, no HOA letters, no weird posts online. I even started to believe it was finally over. Then came Saturday. I woke up to laughter outside, loud, mocking laughter. When I stepped onto the porch, I saw 3 neighborhood kids standing near my gate. Behind them was Karen, arms crossed, smirking. "Morning," I said cautiously. She smiled sweetly. "Just reminding everyone that this gate isn't as private as you think." The kids giggled. One of them pressed a random combination of numbers on the keypad, and to my horror, the gate opened. It took me a second to realize what had happened. The system wasn't broken, she had guessed my backup code. I'd used the same pattern as my garage door for convenience, and Karen, being the nosy hawk she was, must have seen me type it once. I tried to keep my composure as the kids ran through the open gate, cheering. "Karen, you're trespassing again," I said. She replied smugly, "Actually, I'm supervising a community safety demonstration." I hit the override on my phone, locking the gate mid-sentence. The kids turned around just as the motor whirred, and they barely made it out before it shut again. "That's enough," I said sharply. "You're endangering them." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be dramatic. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with walls, they wouldn't seem so tempting." My patience snapped. "You're done, Karen. I've got video, witnesses, and now proof you know my codes. Keep pushing, and this becomes criminal." Her expression faltered for the first time. "You wouldn't dare." I smiled. "Watch me." That evening, I changed every access code, reset the entire system, and even replaced the keypad itself. My wife called it Karen Proofing 2.0. We laughed, but beneath it was exhaustion. Living next to her was like living beside a natural disaster, predictable in its destruction but impossible to stop. Sunday morning brought the calm before the next storm. I was sipping coffee when my phone pinged with a new email from the HOA. "Urgent, emergency board meeting scheduled." No subject details, no agenda. Just a Zoom link and a time, 2 p.m. I had a bad feeling. When I joined the call, half the neighborhood was there, cameras on, faces tense. Karen was back in her chair at the head of the table. Bill looked resigned. "We're here today because Karen has filed a motion," he said. "She's demanding a community vote to remove the new fencing ordinance." Karen leaned forward, voice syrupy. "These unsightly fortifications destroy the spirit of our neighborhood. We used to be open and welcoming. Now we're hiding behind barriers." She didn't look at me, but everyone knew who she meant. If we don't restore our sense of unity, this community will rot. I raised my hand. If unity means letting people trespass at will, I'll take rot. A few people chuckled, but Karen continued undeterred. "We can't let one man dictate our landscape," she said. "His obsession with privacy is contagious." When the vote came, I held my breath. Bill read the results slowly. Motion denied. 5 votes against, 1 in favor. Karen's smile froze in place. Her microphone was still on, and we all heard her whisper, "Idiots. Every last one of you." Then she slammed her laptop shut, ending the meeting for everyone. For a long moment the screen went black. My wife and I stared at each other. "She's not going to take that well," she said. I nodded. "No. She's going to make it personal." That night, while checking the backyard, I noticed something gleaming near the base of the fence. Small, circular, metallic. I crouched down and realized it was a screw, freshly dropped. Above it, one of the fence panels was slightly loose. Someone had been tampering again. I looked up toward Karen's dark house. A single curtain fluttered, then stilled. I tightened the panel, locked the gate again, and went back inside. My phone buzzed with a notification from the security app. Audio alert detected. 2:04 a.m. I tapped play. Faint footsteps. Then a whisper. A woman's voice, barely audible. "Let's see you lock this one." I didn't sleep at all after that. By Monday morning, the tension had a pulse of its own. The whole neighborhood seemed to hum with it, like static before a storm. Even Jasper, usually unbothered by everything except the mailman, kept pacing the fence line and whining at nothing. My wife said, "You need to call Daniels again." But I didn't. Not yet. Karen hadn't crossed the line fully this time, just brushed up against it, whispering at the edge. I knew her well enough to recognize the pattern. Humiliation, rage, plotting, and then an impulsive act that would backfire. I just didn't know what form it would take this time. That evening, the first clue appeared in the form of an official-looking envelope taped to my mailbox. It bore the HOA logo, clean, embossed, intimidating. But the paper inside wasn't standard. It was a notice of fine for unauthorized security upgrades. The listed amount? $500. Signed at the bottom in bold, looping letters. Acting President, Karen L. Macmillan. I laughed out loud. Acting President? She'd given herself her title back. My wife joined me at the kitchen counter, reading over my shoulder. She's unhinged, she said. Completely. I nodded, already scanning the fine print. The address at the bottom wasn't the HOA office. It was Karen's house. She'd literally drafted the document herself and dropped it off pretending it was official. Let's make it official then, I said, grabbing my phone. I emailed Bill the scanned document with the subject line, "Your president seems to be precedenteing again." His reply came 5 minutes later. "Oh, for God's sake. I'll handle it." I thought that was the end of it. But Karen wasn't just fighting for authority anymore. She was fighting for relevance. That kind of desperation doesn't fade quietly. It combusts. The next morning, a utility truck parked outside my property. 2 men in orange vests started walking toward my gate. I stepped out. "Can I help you?" One of them said, "We're here to shut off water temporarily." Scheduled maintenance. My stomach tightened. Scheduled by who? He flipped through his clipboard. Request came from the HOA president. I almost laughed again, but the men weren't joking. "You might want to check that request again," I said. "The HOA president's been suspended." They looked uncertain. I pointed toward Karen's house. "If you need clarification, she's probably watching from that window right now." Sure enough, her curtain twitched. The taller worker sighed. "We'll double-check before touching anything." They left 10 minutes later, clearly irritated, but not before Karen emerged from her porch, feigning innocence. "Is there a problem?" she asked sweetly. "You're impersonating a utility authority now," I said. "That's new even for you." She smirked. "Maybe if you weren't so secretive, people wouldn't need to double-check your setup." By noon, I had emailed both the utility company and the HOA board with a detailed report. Bill's response was short but loaded. "We're convening an emergency meeting tonight. Please attend." The emergency meeting turned into something straight out of a courtroom drama. Half the neighborhood logged in. Karen appeared on screen, looking furious but composed, wearing a blazer like she was defending herself in court. Bill looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Karen," he began, "we've received multiple complaints about you impersonating officials and issuing unauthorized fines." Karen smiled tightly. "Those were not unauthorized. They were necessary. Our neighborhood's image is deteriorating because certain individuals," she glanced at me, "believe rules don't apply to them." Bill rubbed his temples. "You were suspended. You had no authority to act on behalf of the HOA. She leaned closer to her webcam. "Then reinstate me. Clearly no one else here is capable of maintaining order. I've kept this community together for 10 years. Linda's voice came softly from another tile on the screen. "You've scared everyone for 10 years. Karen froze. The silence that followed was almost satisfying. "Excuse me," she said finally. Linda didn't back down. "You fined me because my trash can lid wasn't closed all the way. You threatened to report my husband for parking too close to the curb. You made a 12-year-old cry over sidewalk chalk." Another neighbor spoke up. "You tried to tow my car during a thunderstorm because my tire was half an inch over the driveway line." The floodgates opened. Voices piled on one another, years of frustration spilling out. Karen tried to talk over them, but every time she opened her mouth, someone else brought up another story. By the end, she was sitting in frozen disbelief, eyes darting between faces. "You're all ungrateful," she said finally, voice trembling. "I kept you safe. I kept this place beautiful. Without me, it'll fall apart." Bill cleared his throat. "Karen, we've already voted to remove you permanently from the board. Your behavior has become a liability. You'll receive the paperwork tomorrow." Her face went blank, then hardened. "You think you can erase me? You'll regret this." Then she left the meeting without another word. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Because when someone's entire identity is built on control, losing it is like losing oxygen. I knew this wasn't the end. I just didn't know how far she'd go. 2 days later, my fence camera caught something I hadn't seen before: construction equipment. A small excavator was parked on the shared property line between my yard and the community trail. A man in a reflective vest was unloading supplies: cement bags, wooden posts. I stepped outside, waving for him to stop. "Hey, what's going on here?" He wiped sweat from his brow and said, "HOA ordered a boundary realignment. Got the work order right here." I took the paper. Sure enough, the work order listed Macmillan, HOA president, as the requester. Karen had forged another document, this time to physically move my property boundary. I called Daniels immediately. He showed up faster than I expected, irritation written all over his face. "I swear she's trying to earn a permanent file in our system," he muttered. The worker gave a statement, the machine was hauled away, and Karen, when confronted, played innocent. "It's all a misunderstanding," she said sweetly. "I thought I still had clearance from before the vote." But Daniels wasn't buying it. "Ma'am, forging work orders is a crime." She flinched but covered it with a smile. "You can't prove intent." He smiled back. "That's the thing about paper trails, they prove everything." By the end of the day, she had a citation and a formal complaint filed against her. It wasn't jail, but it was the first official consequence she'd ever faced. I figured that might finally be enough to stop her. But that night I learned how wrong I was. At 1:12 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Motion alert. Then another. Then the alarm, a shrill, rising wail that jolted both of us awake. I checked the live feed and my blood ran cold. Someone had driven a pickup truck straight into the outer section of my fence. The panels were cracked, the gate dented. The truck's headlights were still on, engine idling. I rushed outside, flashlight in hand. Jasper barked like mad behind me. The driver's seat was empty. The truck door hung open. And in the dirt beside it, a familiar object gleamed under my porch light, a pearl earring. I didn't need to guess whose it was. I called Daniels before even catching my breath. Within 15 minutes, the place was swarming with police. They took photos, collected the earring, and ran the plate. The truck belonged to a landscaping company 2 streets over. The owner said it had been borrowed without permission that evening. He'd filed a report 2 hours earlier. Daniels turned to me, jaw tight. "She's escalating." They canvassed the area, but Karen's house was dark. Her SUV was gone. For the first time since this feud began, I felt something close to fear, not because she could hurt me, but because she'd lost the one thing holding her back, her pride. People like Karen are dangerous when cornered. At sunrise, I stood by the ruined section of my fence, coffee in hand, exhaustion in my bones. My wife joined me silently. "She's unraveling," I said quietly. She nodded. "And she's going to take the whole neighborhood with her if she can." Jasper sniffed the ground near the tire tracks, then barked once, sharp and alert, at something in the grass. I followed his gaze and saw a small plastic tag half buried in the dirt. I picked it up. It was from the HOA's key tag system, the ones that opened the community tool shed. Number 001. The master tag. Karen's. It wasn't over. It was just turning into something much bigger. The police investigation moved slower than I liked. Paperwork, jurisdictional gray zones, and the usual "we're looking into it" made it clear that, while the cops took it seriously, they weren't ready to label Karen as the culprit outright. Daniels assured me they were building a solid case, but I could see in his eyes that he knew what I knew: this wouldn't end with a citation. Not for someone like her. By midweek, the neighborhood was a living rumor mill. Some people avoided eye contact when I walked Jasper, pretending they didn't see the splintered section of fence now patched with plywood. Others stopped me to whisper theories. "She's hiding at her sister's place." "No, she's in legal trouble and too embarrassed to show her face." One woman even claimed she saw Karen's SUV parked behind the community center late at night, engine running, lights off. I checked the footage from the cameras across the street. Sure enough, around midnight, the silhouette of her car appeared for a few minutes, then vanished again. She was watching. Waiting. Still, I tried to live normally. My wife kept reminding me, don't let her win by making you paranoid. So I worked in the yard, took Jasper on long walks, even had a small cookout with a few neighbors who'd become allies in all this. We laughed about Karen's presidency in exile, and toasted to freedom from tyranny. But behind every joke was a tension no one said out loud. We all knew she wasn't finished. The real explosion came that Friday morning, disguised as progress. Bill stopped by in person, something he hadn't done since this whole thing started. He looked exhausted but hopeful. We finally voted in a new HOA president, he said. Linda agreed to step up. I shook his hand. Good choice. Maybe now things can calm down. He smiled weakly. I hope so. But there's something you should see. He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were glossy printouts of emails, dozens of them. All from an anonymous Gmail address with a username that couldn't have been more obvious. HOA Patriot Leader. The emails were addressed to every local contractor, inspector, and vendor the HOA had ever worked with. They were packed with fabricated complaints about me. Claims that my property had illegal wiring, that I was storing hazardous chemicals, and that my fence installation violated environmental law. Some were even CC'd to the county office. She's spamming everyone, Bill said. It's been non-stop for 3 days. We've been trying to trace the account. I sat down, staring at the pages. There were screenshots attached. All real photos from my yard, taken at angles only someone who'd been on my property could get. Some were even dated the night of the truck incident. She's got access to someone's property, I muttered. Maybe one of her old allies. Bill sighed. Daniels thinks she's getting help from that cousin again, the guy with the work truck. But we can't prove it yet. I asked what the HOA planned to do. We're filing a restraining order, he said. Not just for you, for the entire board. She's been sending threats too. Weird stuff. Like, the community will cleanse itself. It's unhinged. When he left, I sat on the porch staring at my gate. It was closed, solid, immovable, the one line she hadn't truly crossed yet. That's when it hit me. She wasn't trying to get through the gate anymore. She was trying to destroy the idea of it, the thing that represented her loss of control. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m., Jasper growled low from his bed. I muted the TV and listened. There, faint clanging metal from the far side of the fence. I opened the camera feed and froze. The footage showed Karen standing in the dark, flashlight clenched in one hand, a hammer in the other. She wasn't alone. The tall figure from before was beside her again, holding a crowbar. They were working in coordinated silence, loosening bolts on the outer hinges. I didn't think, I just moved. I grabbed my phone, dialed Daniels, and stepped out with a flashlight, shouting across the yard, "You're trespassing again, Karen! Step away from the fence." The beam caught them mid-motion. Karen flinched, dropping the hammer, but the man didn't stop. He turned toward me, face hidden behind a hood. "Back inside," he barked. His voice was low, steady, too steady. I raised my phone higher. "You're on live video right now," I said. "Everything you're doing is being uploaded to the cloud." That got him. He grabbed Karen's arm, hissed something I couldn't make out, and pulled her toward the tree line. I ran closer but stopped short when I saw what they'd done. Half the bolts on the main gate were loosened, the hinge plate bent backward. One more good shove, and the entire structure could have collapsed inward. By the time the police arrived, they were gone. Daniels surveyed the damage silently, then turned to me. "You were right. This is organized now." He kicked one of the tools left behind, a heavy wrench engraved with the logo of that same landscaping company. "We'll bring her in tomorrow for questioning." The next day they did. Karen was arrested just after noon, taken from her driveway while several neighbors watched. The footage spread fast on the community group, grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. Karen shouting, "This is harassment! You're all sheep!" as the officers guided her into the cruiser. Someone commented, finally, and half the neighborhood liked it within minutes. I thought that was it. I thought we could breathe again. For a few days we did. The HOA finally held a normal meeting. Linda talked about community gardening projects, recycling drives, ordinary wholesome stuff. Everyone was cautiously happy. My wife even joked, "Maybe we'll sleep through an entire week for once." And for 3 nights we did. Then came the letter. It arrived on Friday afternoon, handwritten, no return address. The writing was neat, controlled, eerily calm. "You think this ends with me," it said. "But this community was built on order. Without me, chaos wins. You've turned them against me. So I'll show them what chaos looks like." I read it twice. No threats by name, no direct criminal language. Just a promise that felt worse than any insult she'd ever hurled. I called Daniels immediately. He took the letter, bagged it for evidence, and told me she was out on bail pending hearing. "She's supposed to stay away from everyone here," he said grimly. "But she's unpredictable." That night, I couldn't shake the sense that she was already planning her encore. I reinforced the gate again, double-checked every lock, and kept the porch lights blazing. My wife went to bed early, exhausted, but I stayed awake, sitting by the window with Jasper snoring at my feet. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the floodlights snapped on. Motion sensors triggered in a perfect chain from the far fence to the gate to the driveway. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone, switched to the live feed, and there it was. The gate was open. Wide open. I rushed outside. The night air was thick and humid. The driveway stretched empty in both directions. But the keypad cover dangled by a single screw, and the motor box was smoking slightly, wires cut clean through. Someone had shorted it manually. I took a few cautious steps forward, and that's when I saw the message. Spray painted across the inside of the gate in bright red letters. "Neighborhoods need leaders." It wasn't rage anymore. It was ideology. The cops came again, took photos, filed another report. They increased patrols in the area, promised to check her property daily. But Daniels pulled me aside before he left. "You need to be careful," he said. "People like her, when they start believing they're the victim of a system, they don't stop at fences." By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I called a contractor and ordered the final upgrade: a solid steel gate, reinforced hinges, coated locks, backup solar power, and an emergency barrier that could drop automatically in a blackout. My wife thought it was overkill. "You're turning the house into a fortress," she said softly. "Exactly," I replied. She wanted to make me the villain? Fine. Let her see what happens when the villain gets organized. The installation took 3 days. When it was done, the house looked impenetrable. And that's when I noticed something eerie. Karen's house was empty. For sale sign on the lawn, blinds open, furniture gone. She'd vanished overnight. I stood by the gate that evening, staring at the empty driveway across the street. "You think she's really gone?" my wife asked. I didn't answer right away. Because deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the type to fade quietly. People like her don't just move on. They linger, in systems, in gossip, in the cracks of the rules they once enforced. Still, I tried to believe it. For the first time in months, the air felt light. No notes, no alarms, no distant headlights. I slept soundly that night, dreaming of silence. But at dawn, Jasper started barking again. Loud, insistent, almost panicked. I went to the window. The for sale sign on Karen's lawn had been knocked down. And spray painted across her front door, in the same red as my gate, were 5 words that made my blood run cold. "Leaders don't run, they return." The sun rose over the cul-de-sac in a thin, orange haze, the kind of quiet morning that almost feels fake, like a movie scene before everything goes wrong. I stood at my window with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, staring across the street at Karen's old house. The spray-painted words were still there, bold and dripping, the red letters catching the light like dried blood. Leaders don't run, they return. Daniels had sent a patrol car the night before, but the officer hadn't found anything unusual. The real estate sign was broken, the house still locked up, no footprints except the ones I'd already seen. Probably a vandal copying her style, he'd said. Teenagers love drama. But I knew better. The letters weren't random. They were her handwriting. The same sharp, controlled strokes she used when she wrote violation notices. I'd seen it too many times to mistake it. My wife came into the kitchen behind me, still half asleep. "You're staring again," she murmured. "Because it's not over," I said quietly. "She's sending messages. Or she's gone and you're chasing ghosts." I wanted to believe her, but ghosts don't leave fresh paint. By mid-morning, the neighborhood was buzzing again. People took photos from a distance, whispered in groups by their mailboxes, speculated wildly. One man said he'd seen Karen's SUV at dawn, parked by the community pond, engine running. Another swore she was out of state. Bill stopped by to calm everyone down. "We can't jump to conclusions," he said, though his eyes flicked nervously toward her house every few seconds. I told him I was done reacting, that I'd handle things my way. He didn't ask what that meant. He knew better by now. That afternoon, I decided to check her property myself. If she was truly gone, there'd be signs. The locks were standard. The police had cleared them. But something felt off about the silence there. Too still, too calculated. I crossed the street, staying on the sidewalk, and called out once, "Karen?" Nothing. I tried the gate. It creaked open just enough to reveal the backyard. That's when I saw it. Her garden, the one she used to obsessively prune, the one she fined people for, disrupting the view of, was a wreck. Tools scattered everywhere, flower pots smashed, a pile of burnt papers in a rusted metal tub. I stepped closer and saw fragments of letters, HOA stationery, her name, half-melted seals. She'd burned her records. Every fine, every bylaw draft, every written reminder of her control, gone. And right in the center of the mess sat something stranger, my old gate keypad. The one I'd replaced weeks ago. The display was cracked, wires hanging out, but taped across it in black marker was a note. "You changed the code. I changed the rules." I felt the hair rise on my neck. She'd been here recently, maybe even last night. I snapped photos, then called Daniels again. He arrived within the hour, gloves on, scanning the yard. "She's spiraling," he said under his breath. "This isn't revenge anymore. This is obsession turned inward." He looked around the property, noticing the burn pile, the melted plastic. "You see how she destroys her own things first? That's what people do when they're preparing for something big." "Like what?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. "Keep your cameras running. And don't leave your house tonight." That evening, the temperature dropped fast. Clouds rolled in, thick and bruised-looking, and by sunset the wind had picked up. A storm was coming, fitting, considering the kind of week I'd had. My wife tried to distract us with a movie, but neither of us was really watching. Every sound outside made us pause. Jasper refused to leave the porch. He'd sit by the door, staring into the dark like he could hear something we couldn't. Around 9:47 p.m., the first alert came through. "Motion detected, west fence line." I opened the feed immediately. The storm had already started. Rain streaked the camera lens. But between flashes of lightning, I saw movement, a figure standing just beyond the light's reach. Tall, soaked, completely still. I hit the intercom. "Karen, if that's you, you're being recorded again." No response. The figure didn't move. I zoomed in as far as I could, but the rain distorted the image. Then, another flash, and this time, I saw the reflection of two people. Someone else was with her. I ran for the front door, my wife shouting after me. The wind whipped my jacket as I stepped outside. "Karen!" I yelled. Nothing but thunder. I turned the flashlight toward the fence, empty. No footprints, no movement, just puddles and mud. I scanned the yard, the gate, the driveway, all clear. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the lightning had played tricks on me. Then I heard it, metal creaking. I spun around toward the side gate. It was open an inch, slowly swinging. I bolted for it, flashlight trembling, and kicked it shut. The latch clicked, but when I turned the light downward, my stomach dropped. There was a shoe print. Small, narrow, unmistakably hers. Right in the middle of the concrete. I backed up fast, locked the main door, and hit the emergency lockdown switch. Every bolt on the new steel gate slid into place with a satisfying metallic thud. My wife met me at the door, eyes wide. Was it her? Yeah, I said. And she's not alone. We didn't sleep that night. The rain hammered the roof, the thunder rattled the windows, and every few hours, the sensors blinked like nerves under skin, detecting, clearing, detecting again. By dawn, the storm was gone, leaving a soaked, silent street behind. I stepped outside cautiously, phone ready. The first thing I saw was the paint. My fence, my brand-new, steel-reinforced fence, was covered in streaks of blue. Not random splatters, but deliberate brushstrokes forming words. You locked me out of my home. Below it, another line, scrawled smaller. Now let's see how you like it. The lockbox on my gate had been glued shut, completely filled with epoxy. I couldn't even open it with the override key. The system was bricked. My wife came outside and just whispered, "She's losing it." She already lost it, I said quietly. Now she's trying to make me lose it too. We called Daniels again. He came within an hour, inspected the damage, then looked up at me. We have her on camera at 3 other houses last night, he said grimly. She painted messages on their mailboxes, stuff like "fake neighbors" and "you owe me." We've got enough now for a warrant. When they finally found her, it wasn't where I expected. She wasn't hiding in her house or driving her SUV around the neighborhood. She was sitting in the empty HOA office, alone. No lights, no phone, just sitting at the conference table with a stack of old paperwork in front of her. The officer who arrested her said she didn't even resist. When asked what she was doing there, she said, "I was keeping order." Daniels called me personally that afternoon. "She's being evaluated," he said. "They'll likely keep her in observation for a while." I didn't know what to say. Relief wasn't the right word. It wasn't satisfaction either. Just a strange, heavy silence. That night, I walked the perimeter of my yard one last time. The blue paint was still there, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. I decided to leave it for now, a reminder of how far things had gone. My wife joined me, slipping her arm through mine. "Think it's finally over?" she asked. I looked toward the empty house across the street. The windows were dark, the sign gone, the grass overgrown. "It's over for now," I said. "But people like her don't just disappear. They wait for a new rule to enforce." She smiled faintly. "Then you better keep your binder ready." I laughed softly. The Karen Chronicles will never close. A week later, life began to return to normal. The HOA met without incident. Neighbors started planting again, repainting, even inviting each other over for barbecues, things they hadn't done in years. The street felt alive again. And every time someone joked about the Great Karen War, we laughed, but underneath it was something almost like gratitude. We'd survived her. Still, sometimes at night, when the wind rattles the fence or the gate hums a little too long before locking, I find myself glancing at the cameras again. Just in case. And once, only once, about a month later, I checked the feed and froze. The far corner of the street, just by the old oak tree, caught the briefest flicker of movement. A figure in a hoodie. Not close enough to see, not long enough to be sure. But the shape was familiar. Then the feed cut to static for exactly 11 seconds, the same way it had the night this all began. When it came back, the screen was empty again. I smiled grimly, sipping my coffee, and whispered to myself, "Welcome back, Madam President."